Good morning, everyone. Today, I will take my class on communication. Communication is a very important topic for your syllabus. Lots of questions can come from this chapter, particularly MCQs are very important from this chapter. Apart from MCQs, short type answer type question or descriptive questions may also come from this chapter. So I would request all the students to listen to this video very carefully so that they can have a concrete understanding on this topic. Let's start. The first slide is what is communication? The word communication, which is an English word, this word is derived from a Latin word communis, which means to share something with someone. So, communication is a process of sharing something, some ideas, some concept, some knowledge, some information with the others. So, communication tells us the process of transmitting information from one person to another, from one place to another, or it may be from one group to another group. So every communication process involves at least one sender, message, and a recipient. This include our emotions, the cultural situation where we exist, the medium we use to communicate with others, and even our present location. So all these factors uh, interact with each other, and they as a whole help to make a communication process successful. Okay, then the communication process. In fact, this is a very basic communication diagram. Let's look into this diagram. The first part of this diagram is the sender. Then comes the encoding, then message, then decoding, and then receiver. After receiver, here comes the feedback and another element which is called noise. Now, who is a sender? Sender is normally the communicator or the speaker who sends the information to the other person who acts as a receiver of this process. So, the function of a sender is to send the information to the receiver. The next term is encoding. That means sender sends the message to the receiver by encoding process. What is encoding? Encoding is a conversion process by which the sender encodes the message on the basis of the present level of knowledge, feeling, or emotions of the sender, and it is sent to the receiver. So, encoding is basically a conversion process by which message is transmitted into some form so that it can be effectively sent to the receiver. Then comes the message. Message is itself the core concept or core thought which is sent by the sender to the receiver. After message, then comes the decoding process. So, decoding is a process or decoding is an activity by which the receiver simplifies the message, breaks down the message to draw best understanding or accurate understanding from the information or from the message which is sent by the sender. And lastly, the receiver is a person who receives the information and decodes it to derive the best possible understanding from the message. On the basis of the understanding, the receiver generates a reply to the sender. This reply is called as feedback. So feedback here works as a connecting factor, a connecting road between sender and receiver. The sender of this communication process uh, actually comes to an opinion whether this information is fully understood by the receiver or not on the basis of feedback. So feedback always plays a very important role in communication process. Then comes the channel of the communication. Though this term channel of the communication is not mentioned in this communication diagram, still channel is an important element of communication process. What is the channel? The channel is basically the road or the medium through which the message is transmitted from the sender to the receiver. Say as an example, if I want to say something to my friend or to my student, then I can speak it out verbally, or I can send an SMS to that student or to my friend, or I can use my sign language to come to call him, or to send any kind of message through non-verbal sign or movements of my body. So the way I am sending my message is called the medium or the channel of communication. The last element, which is indeed a very important element of communication process, is called noise. Noise is a disturbance or an external factor which plays a very important role in communication process. Here the term noise is actually used symbolically. Here noise doesn't mean sound. Here knowledge is used uh, to describe any kind of disturbance which may come in the communication process and create problem. So noise is an external element, or it is an individual factor which is neither in the control of the sender nor in the control of the receiver, which acts individually and creates problem in communication process. So this is the total communication process, and this is the way the information travels from the sender to the receiver successfully. And if all the parameters or all the elements of a communication process works synchronizingly, then only the receiver will be able to derive the best meaning out of the message, or can sense the message or can read the message in the same sense as sent by the sender. And then only we can say that the communication is successful. So this is how the communication process works. Okay. Next comes the types of communication. So in the previous slide we have discussed the different elements which works together to make a communication process successful. Now in this slide we will see what are the different types of communication exist in communication process. Uh, we can broadly categorize the types of communication into three categories. The first one is on the basis of organizational relationship. See, organization is an entity which is a collection of different departments and a huge number of employees. So, in an organization, always official relationship or formal relationship exist between the among the employees. And obviously, along with the formal or official relationship, there is existence of informal relationships also among the employees. So, on the basis of organizational relationship, we can divide the communication into two types. One is the formal communication and the other is the informal communication. Then, on the basis of flow of information means, suppose one information is sent by the boss to his junior person, or sometimes request or information is shared by a junior employee to the senior employee. So on the basis of the flow of information, we can categorize the communication into horizontal communication, vertical communication, and crosswise communication. Vertical communication is again divided into upward communication and downward communication. Then, on the basis of expression or the medium used to communicate with each other, or the media which takes which takes the role of a very effective um, mm, communication medium. Uh, on the basis of this, we can divide the communication into two parts. One is the verbal communication and the other is non-verbal communication. So these are the various types of communication which we can see uh, in communication process. Next comes the formal communication. Formal communication is a kind of communication which exists in the organization and which flows along the line of management or authority. The existence of formal communication can be seen in organizational context. Formal communication always takes the shape of manual or forms or reports or meetings, etc., where the main focus of communication is obviously the official matter. So, formal communication deals with only the official or um, business communication, and uh, it is normally observed within the business organization or business forum. Okay. Next, types of formal communication. We can divide formal communication into four parts. One is the downward communication, one is the upward communication, which is called the vertical communication, which is basically the division of vertical communication, then the horizontal communication, and lastly the diagonal communication. So we can formally we can divide formal communication into three parts: vertical communication, horizontal communication, or diagonal communication. We can divide vertical communication into two parts: downward and upward communication, then horizontal and diagonal communication. One thing is very important to mention here is horizontal communication is also known as lateral communication, and diagonal communication is also known as crossword or crosswise communication. All these terms are same and used synonymously. Okay, now vertical communication. What is vertical communication? Vertical communication is a kind of communication that flows both up and down within the organization. It is the communication that takes place between managers and their superiors and subordinates. Vertical communication may involve only two persons, or it may flow through several different organization levels or hierarchy. So, if we sum up, then we can say vertical communication is a formal communication, obviously, which is uh, which is transmitted within the organization both upwardly and downwardly. And uh, we can see the existence of vertical communication throughout the organization, irrespective of the organizational hierarchy. This is the characteristics of vertical communication. Okay. Now, one division of vertical communication is downward communication. Downward communication means the flow of information is from upper position to lower position. From the image which is shown here, you can see the uh, the direction of the arrow is downward. That means the information comes from the top level to down level to lower level. Okay, so downward communication is the process of transmitting information from upper level, that means the superior or bosses of the organization, to the lower levels, that means to subordinates, to the junior employees, and for that reason it is called downward communication. Okay, next, the upward communication. Upward communication is the process of sending the information or informing the information or sharing the information from the junior level to the senior level. From the arrow itself, you can see the uh, the direction of the arrow is upward. That means the information is coming from the lower level to the higher level. Okay, like the image, the information is coming from the worker to low level management, then mid level management, then top level management. So the information is coming through different organizational hierarchy, but obviously from the lower organizational position to the higher organizational position, and for that it is called the upward communication. Okay, then comes the horizontal communication. Horizontal communication is also called the lateral communication, as I have already mentioned in my previous slide. And when employees belong to the same level, or horizontal communication is a kind of communication uh, through which information is shared between employees or departments or units within the same organizational level, and for that it is technically called horizontal communication or lateral communication. From the image you can see there are different departments shown in this picture. One is the purchase department, production department, quality control department, and the sales department. Now the manager of purchase department is communicating with the manager of quality control department. Their designation are managers, but they are representing different departments. The manager of production department is communicating with the manager of sales department. So again, though they are all managers, but they represents different departments, and so for that reason it is called horizontal communication or lateral communication. Okay, this is the diagonal communication. Diagonal communication means the crosswise or crossword communication, the communication that cuts across work areas and organizational levels. This is called the diagonal communication. In this picture or image which is shown in the slide, top management, under top management there are different managers of different department, and when one employee from a particular department is communicating with the manager of a different departments, so this is called diagonal communication, because this communication is cutting across departments and hierarchical difference. One employee from X department is communicating with a manager of Y department. So this is called diagonal communication. When one employee of one department is communicating with the other employee of other department, it will be a diagonal communication. Okay, so up to this point, what we have learned? We have learned that communication is a process of sharing or transmitting information from one person to another, from one place to another, or from one group to another. The benefit of communication is it helps the employees to express their point of views, to express their logic, to stand by, to support their point of view. Communication gives us strength and freedom of expression. Communication motivates employees to be more productive in the organization. Communication helps us to build a relationship, positive relationships, whether it may be in our personal life, it may be in our organizational life. So these are the benefits of the communication. We can uh, we can see there are different types of communication that exist in communication process, and we have just discussed the formal communication. Formal communication is a type of communication which is mainly used in organizational context when employees communicate with each other uh, with matters which are related completely to their workplace or work related topic. That will be an example of formal communication. We can divide formal communication into three parts. One is vertical communication, then the horizontal communication, and lastly the diagonal communication. Vertical communication means the flow of communication within the organization is both upward and downward. Uh, in upward communication, we can see the flow of information is from lower level to higher level. When a junior employee shares job related information to his senior or sends reports, day-to-day reports, that will be an example of upward communication. Then there is a downward communication under vertical communication. When a senior shares job instruction or any order or directives to his junior employees, that will be an example of downward communication. Formal communication, in formal communication there is another two types of communication, uh, like horizontal communication and diagonal communication. Horizontal communication is called as lateral communication, and diagonal communication is called as crosswise or crossword communication. When the employees of the organization communicates with each other, and when the employees of the same level or employees of the same hierarchical position communicate with each other, uh, then it will be called as horizontal communication. And when the employees of different departments will communicate with each other, uh, obviously on the basis of their requirement or job related any requirement, that will be an example of diagonal communication. Okay, now formal communication is a very controlled and deliberate effort which is made by the employees when we communicate within the organization. When an official relationship exists between the employees, they are always conscious and focus about what they are speaking to others and how they are behaving or the way they are communicating with others. So the expressions are very controlled, and um, the expressions are deliberate. So in a formal communication, there is always a chain of command which is present within the communication system. Okay. One advantage of formal communication is that formal communication is very straightforward, is very specific and precise. If I have to share some instruction to my junior, then I can directly call him up and convey the message, or I can directly send a notice and can instruct him what he has to do. Okay, so it is in that way. Formal communication is very straightforward, and it is very precise and specific, so there is less scope of misunderstanding and misconception in formal communication. But one disadvantage of formal communication is that normally workload is increased due to formal communication. When your boss calls you up and gives some instruction about some work, then your workload is increased. So this is a negative aspect. And sometimes when a junior employee shares his suggestion, uh, job related suggestion with his boss, or sends some request, then in most of the cases these requests or suggestions are overheard or are ignored, and it indirectly decreases the motivation of the employees. So this is the negative aspect of formal communication. But formal communication helps to take action on immediate basis, as it is very straightforward in nature. So in this particular video we have described what is communication, how does communication network works, and the formal communication and its different types. Okay, listen to this video carefully and we'll discuss rest of the portions of communication in next slides. Till then, bye bye.